Welcome back. Thanks for coming back. Excited to speak to today's guest. I'm going to say I've only met him once. He was on Would I Lie to You. He's a funny man. He's always funny. He's a funny guy. You're a funny guy. Oh, do you think I'm funny? Do I amuse you? It's Birmingham's finest, Joe Lycett. Wow.
Hello.
It looks like Joe Lycett. It sounds like Joe Lycett.
It looks like Rob Brydon. It sounds, I'd say Rob Brydon-esque.
There's a certain air of Brydon to me that I've tried to cultivate. I mean, you be the judge.
I think you've got quite close. There's always room for improvement.
Well, he's an enigmatic fellow, and he's difficult to pin down.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of the above. How are you?
Yes. Well, I'm very well, and all the better for seeing you. Thank you for doing this.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I mean, I've started so many of these things, and we have started, by the way, but that'll come as no shock to a man as abreast the modern media as Joe Lycett. I start so many of these trying to talk about when we met. Now, and I risk embarrassment, I think it was when you came on Would I Lie to You.
I actually couldn't tell you when we first met. It probably was Would I Lie to You. I know we've met at a Harry Hill gig, but I think I'd done Would I Lie to You by that point.
Was that Christmas benefit thing?
It was a Christmas benefit, and I think people were singing songs, I think, rather than doing stand-up.
I just sang Merry Christmas, Everyone by Shakin' Stevens, thinking it would be quite fun in an almost Andy Kaufman-esque way to just sing it straight.
Yeah.
But with hindsight, I would have maybe done it differently. I've done some charity gigs where I go, well, look, it's a charity gig. I'll just do some of my stuff. And then you see some of your peers who really knock it out of the park.
It's infuriating, isn't it? You think, fucking Harry Hill actually did some work for this. Am I allowed to swear on this, Rob? I'm sorry, I just swore.
Good God, yes. You can say flipping, and you can say, you can say the C word, crikey. No, you can't. Listen, it's up to you. If your personal standards say to you that it's okay, and I realise from doing my arduous research on you that I seem to have something in common with Mr. Jim Davidson.
Oh.
I read that early on in your career you toured with Jim, and he was supportive, but he didn't like your swearing.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, isn't that funny that Jim David... Do you feel like that's the only thing that is similar to you and Jim Davidson, or are there other things that you'd like to admit?
I don't know.
Now, or?
I've only met Jim once, I think, at a memorial service. I sat next to him at a memorial service, and that wasn't the time to discuss your ideological differences, was it?
No. If you don't mind me asking, who was the memorial service for? Someone we know, or
Mussolini?
I see. Yes, perfect.
No, it was for the wonderful Welsh actor raconteur Victor Spinetti.
I'm not familiar with Victor.
Victor was the only actor to appear in all the Beatles films. He won a Tony on Broadway for Oh, What a Lovely War. And with Jim, he appeared in some of Jim's adult pantomimes.
Oh, I see. Yes. They had fabulous names, didn't they? Like Cinderella, but Sin was spelled S-I-N.
Well, you and he then were kindred spirits because your tours are delightfully titled. I put it to you, Mr. Lycett, that you are a man very comfortable with a pun.
I am.
Will you admit that we'll build up to the current tour, but that's the way, Joe Lycett, a super title.
Thank you.
If Joe Lycett, then you should have put a ring on it.
Yeah.
Some Lycett hot. More. Is this the new one?
The current one, yeah. The
more. How do you Lycett? How do you Lycett?
Yeah. They're getting sillier, aren't they?
Well, they're good. And then I'm about to lose control, and I think Joe Lycett.
Yeah, that might be my favourite one. I don't know. It's hard. Each year, or each time, I only tour every sort of few years. Each time I come to it, I think, I haven't got a good one now, have I? And then I just find one somehow. There's a lot of songs with "like it" in the title. It's very helpful.
I'm on thin ground. There's just bride and groom. I could do a wedding-themed show.
Yes. There's definitely a reality TV show there. if you wanted to sort of do a spin-off.
The ghost of Christmas future for me is me on some obscure channel. Hello, welcome to another Bride and Groom, and this week I'm in Doncaster.
I'd love that. I'd tune into that.
This is Derek. He's about to give. That's right, Rob. It's my third marriage, and it's smashing that you've come all this way. Can I say how much I love? It's Michael Parkinson. Sorry. Anyway, listen now. We've gone. I'm doing far too much talking here. So Jim had these titles, Cinderella.
Yes.
How did you come to be working with him? When was it? Let's take a little rest here around this part of your career.
This was probably about 7 years ago. I was a newer comic, and I was doing a lot of mixed bill gigs, getting some nice work doing kind of weekend comedy clubs like your Glee clubs and your comedy stores in London, those kinds of places. And there was a comedy festival in Devizes, which I'm not sure still happens, but there was I was on a mixed bill later on in the evening, and Jim was up in the main room doing a full show, and I was curious about going to see him perform. So I watched it, and I probably only watched about 20 minutes, but I was really struck by how incredibly talented he is and what an amazing performer he is. And then there were just a few moments that sort of jarred for me, and what I was surprised by is that he used a word for a Chinese person which is dated and probably arguably offensive, and it didn't need to be in there. It didn't add anything to the story, and all of his stories were so well constructed, so considered. And we then did a gig that evening, or we were going to, but we had a drink in between, and I just thought I'd ask him about it, and he didn't. I can't really remember exactly what his answer was, but He didn't really answer. I remember not being necessarily that satisfied with his answer, but just sort of thought, well, fair enough, I've asked the question. And then that evening, he played at the gig that I was playing at as a sort of special guest, and changed the wording. And as he changed the wording, he looked across the stage at me, stood on the side of the stage, and made a point of sort of looking me in the eye as he did it. Now, I don't know if that was some sort of power play or whether it was him kind of going fair enough or whatever. We didn't really talk about it afterwards. But then he emailed me a bit. He asked me to support him on tour at one time. He was very supportive for a little while. He kind of said that I was one of his favourite new comics, and so he actually was very nice to me. I find there's quite a lot of people in comedy that are contrarians and have unusual viewpoints, and I love comedy for that. I think that's a great thing about it, that I spend a lot of time with people I wouldn't do normally.
I saw that you did drama and English at Manchester.
When I was studying drama at Manchester, I was just getting terrible roles. No one's putting me in anything. And then when I did get stuff, I was like, oh, why are you telling me where to stand and what to say and how to say it? I just sort of resented somebody telling me what to do. And then I saw a thing come up for doing some stand-up, and I thought, well, let's give it a go. And then it's very addictive, stand-up. It's a real drug. And particularly when you feel like you're saying something that's sort of righteous, I think it does. There's like a chemical that's released where you sort of feel like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm right, and everyone agrees with me, and it feels great.
The very first stuff you did, the very first time you got up on stage, what kind of material?
I used to do a bit about Amazon reviews for the complete works of Shakespeare. And I'd go through the sort of reviews that people had sent in, and they were, I can't remember what any of them are, but you can imagine there's people sort of critiquing Shakespeare, keyboard warriors. You've
done often, haven't you, taking real things, and I remember a great routine of yours that involved a correspondence going back and forth, and you've done a fair bit of that. Where does that come from? Was that something you did anyway before you were doing stand-up?
Yeah, I love it. I'm quite a frightened person in real life. I'm not great with confrontation in person, but when it comes to online, I really don't mind sending irritating messages and being...
So if the stand-up hadn't worked, you could very easily be the sort of person who torments David Baddiel night and day.
Oh, yeah, easy, yes. I'd still happily torment David Baddiel, why not? And yeah, I was in Manchester at university, and I just sent emails to every club and just kept going and just made myself very present. And I remember the Comedy Store in Manchester would give me an open spot every 6 months or so, and I kept saying to Gareth, who was the sound guy there, and would sort of write reports about the shows. I'd say, "Am I ready to go to London yet?" And he'd be like, "No, I think you should do one more." And I was always like, "Come on, Gareth, I want to go and do one in London." And eventually he said, "I think you're ready to go to London now," and it was like the most exciting thing. Then I did the one in London, and I went on after Terry Alderton. Do you know Terry Alderton?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
He did this whole routine about...
I wouldn't want to follow Terry.
Oh, my God. He's amazing. And I think I'm actually performing with him in a month or so. I can't wait to see him. He's one of the best comics. I absolutely adore him. And in the dressing room that day was Eddie Izzard, Rod Gilbert, and Stephen K. Amos. Terry went out. I was going on after this. Terry went out and said, I'm going to start do some impressions. And he said, I'm going to start off, I'm going to just see if I can do Rod Gilbert, and I'm just going to step off. And so he stepped off, and then Rod Gilbert came out, and obviously everyone went mad. Then he said, okay, I've warmed up now. I'm going to try Stephen K. Amos. Then Stephen K. Amos comes out, and then he's like, right, I think I'm really on this now. I think I'm going to do Eddie Izzard. And you just felt the room just go, what? Just this sort of sense of like, no, come on. And then obviously Eddie came out, and they just lost their minds. And I'm watching this going, I've got 10 minutes. How am I going to compete with this? And so I struggled, and Don, who runs the Comedy Store, gave me some mad notes, as he always does, that didn't correlate to notes the next time that I did it, but basically said, you're not ready. And so I had to keep doing open spots there as well. So, yeah, it took me a while.
And when you knew you had that gig in London, so you'd been doing the Manchester Comedy Store, where were you in your head then? You said, I was really excited. Were you trepidatious as well?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had real, I couldn't eat or drink anything before shows. I was a proper...
That's right. I remember that. I'll have a bloody meal now before when I'm on tour at the moment. I have a meal. There we get fish and chips if we're at a seaside town. It's lovely. But when I used to do those open mics on a Friday or Saturday night, after lunchtime, that was it. Could not consume anything else.
Do you always get nervous? There's sometimes when I don't get nervous, and then I get a bit worried, I think.
That's an interesting area, isn't it? Because you'll get some people say, well, if you don't get nervous, it means you're this, and I'm not so sure.
I actually have been nervous for you, I've just remembered.
When was that?
On one occasion, because I used to work at the Manchester Palace Theatre, so front of house, selling ice creams and whatever. And you performed one night when I was working there. And there was a thing you had to do before each performance where you had to test all the chairs, make sure that they were all fine. So you'd have to literally go down each row, push the chair down. And you were rehearsing the end of your show because Peter Kay was going to do a sort of special surprise performance. He kind of was going to pop out. But I remember never really seeing a stand-up just doing a show in a venue on their own. And I remember thinking, so somebody's going to fill this theatre and do a whole show, and there's no set or anything. They're just going to do a thing, and then they're rehearsing a thing they've never done before. Just before they go, all of that felt very strange to me, and very, having done bits of theatre before where it's rehearsed to death before you even do the show. So I remember that feeling of oh gosh, that's what must it be like to be him?
Were you a funny kid at home with your parents and your family?
I did silly little music videos where I'd mime to stuff. So I was doing TikToks before TikTok was a thing, and I pretended to host the news and the weather and things like that. All these little things that I did with a little camera in my house, and I'd put them on my website. And there wasn't social media in the same way, so I'd share it with people on MSN Messenger, I think it was, at school. So I was definitely making stuff and showing off and hoping people would like it.
So you're on tour as we speak with more. How do you lycett? How do you lycett?
Yeah.
Is it more of the same, or are you going in a bold new direction?
A bit of both, I'd say.
Right.
There's definitely, if you've seen me before, there'll be similar, I'll be doing similar silly things as I've always done because I'm the same person. But this one is different in that it's a proper story, and it's about something that I've been doing for the last 3 years, really. And it's a kind of long form stunt. It's a celebration of Birmingham and my local area of Birmingham.
Is it slightly a hybrid thing between a stand-up thing and almost a performance art, or when you have a show that is one big overarching story, does it take on more of a sense of theatre? Yeah,
it definitely has a bit more of that. It is stand-up, but it kind of in previews, I've been getting a bit emotional at the end of the show, which is completely by accident. I didn't plan it for that, but I because it's such a kind of it went off in a direction that was sort of so beautiful that I find myself getting kind of moved by it.
Joe, you've been as charming and engaging, if not more, than I'd expected / hoped. I can only hope it's been a pleasant experience for you as well.
It's been very pleasant. It's been nice to sit and have a chat with you and shoot the breeze.
We're going to bring it to its knees, the breeze.
Yeah, we did.
If you please.
Shot the breeze, if you please. Very nice.
Joe Lycett, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, of course not. What a ridiculous question.
Thank you, Joe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rob. Goodbye.